So now I'm going to show you how to do some appendages, some common ones that people do. So that's my shape that we've just made before. And I need to get some spare clay. And you always knead it a bit before you start working it, just to make sure that it's workable. And it's a good idea to know what you're going to make before you make it. So a common thing to make is horns. So I'm going to make some horns. So I know that my horn, this will be too big if I do one horn like this. So I'm going to just break it in half and I'm going to roll it in a ball just between my two hands. Or you can do it on the table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sculpting it into like a cone shape. So when I'm sculpting it right now, I'm pressing on an angle with my hand. I'm not going flat, I'm going on an angle because I'm trying to bring my clay to a point. Move that out of the way. Now at the moment this is too big, and that's okay. If I can just shape it down a little bit more. It's also too long, so I'm going to cut it. If this is my horn at the moment, I can bring it to a point. It's quite a big horn, they don't need to be that big. You can do it whatever size works for your idea. Now that could be it, and I can join that on there using some of my joining techniques. So that's cross hatching and on both sides and then smoothing it out to join it. I could also go further with this horn and do a spiral pattern by drawing into it and smoothing that out depending on how I want my horn to look. Something that I'll tell you as well that makes it look better is if you don't have any of these little clay bits hanging off of it, just makes it look a lot less resolved. So there I've added some extra details to my horn. You can smooth those out, those details there, being mindful not to chop it off. Okay, so that could be my horn. And I can, like I said, I can stick that on there. Maybe I want that to be a tusk. Okay, so I can do that as well. Another thing that's really popular for people to make are like eyes with eyebrows. So I can get a little bit of clay here, roll it into a ball, flatten it a little bit because I don't want a perfect sphere. Or what I can do if I've got a thinner knife, I'm just going to use this, but you can use a thinner knife, is I can break that in half and I have two eyes there that I can join on using my joining techniques. And on that then I can roll a snake to make some eyebrows. And I can stick those on like that for some nice owl eyebrows. Now with that is not stuck properly. You must make sure you cross hatch and wet the areas to stick them on. I'm just not doing that because I want to keep this base for students who are away when we made them. So that's that. I can also add details into my eyes. I might smooth it down to make it a little bit more shaped the way I'd like it to be. I don't really like perfectly round eyes. I think they look silly. Hope you see what's happening here. The other way you can make appendages is you can start with a ball and you can flatten that out using a roller if you have one. I just don't have one here at this second. Flatten it out, and say I was making, I hope none of you are making an elephant ear, but you could make an elephant ear. You could add a hand onto yours. Let's go with a hand. So I can draw, I'm gonna do a 3-fingered, actually maybe that's more like a bird's foot. It's quite big. That's okay. So you can draw it and then mold it from there. And maybe I want to stick that on around so that it looks like it's holding itself, and I could make another one to do that. And again, you'd cross hatch the side, wet it to stick it on, okay? And be mindful not to make it too thick or too thin. You can add as much or as little detail to that as you feel willing. You might draw into it using a pencil or one of the other tools available. You might give it some nails. You might even draw some details into the hand. Maybe there's all-seeing eyes there. Maybe you add some patterns in. It's not a bad idea to wait to add patterns though until after you've joined it on, because what can happen when you join it is that you might press the patterns out when you're sticking it on. Okay, so there are a few ways. You can also use your tool to cut shapes out of this, but don't cut too many out because then it will not be structurally very strong. Okay, a couple of other notes. This, if you try and make this your appendage, it's too thin, it will likely break. Sometimes I've seen students be successful with things this thin, but most often they break. And always remember that any spare clay you have, you take it back to the teacher for them to put away.